So I'm absolutely delighted to introduce to you Nidhi Zak, Aria Eipe, who is a poet, a pacifist, and a fabulist. She was born in India and grew up across the Middle East, Europe, and North America before calling Ireland home, and we're so lucky and blessed that she has done that. She's the founder of the Play It Forward Fellowships. She serves as poetry editor at Skeen Press and Fallow Media, and she's contributing editor for The Stinging Fly and an advisory board member of Ledbury Poetry Critics Ireland, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. She's also the recipient of a Next Generation Artist Award from the Arts Council of Ireland and the inaugural chair of Poetry Student Award. Auguries of a Minor God, this stunning, beautiful collection in terms of its physicality and its content, was just published 2 weeks ago. So it's a new baby, very new, with Faber and Faber. And I'm very excited. This is Nidhi's only second in-person event reading from the book, so a real treat ahead. So please join me in welcoming Nidhi Zak, Aria Eipe.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Victoria. It's really lovely to be here with all of you and with two poets I admire greatly. So I'm just really delighted. Thank you, Emo, for organising all of this for us. I'm just going to read a few poems from the collection. So the collection is actually in two parts. And the first part is, it follows the arrows of a Hindu god. He's the god of love and memory and desire. And he has 5 flower arrows, and the arrows have different effects on a body. So it can stun someone, it can bewitch them, it can intoxicate them, it can kill them. So the first part of the collection is following the arrows of the god of love, and the second part of the collection it's a long narrative poem which follows the journey of a family of refugees as they move from conflict in the Middle East to the Western world. So I'll read you just a little excerpt from that as well. So this poem is called Ode Today. Ode Today. Today I am going out, and my social calendar is generally something to behold. It was not always like this. There were days when my spine screamed from lying in bed too long, listening to one cinematic dirge spool on repeat, like Max Richter's On the Nature of Daylight, which someone at Vox proclaimed to be the saddest song in the world. And there were days when I was more horizontal than vertical, as if I was still invertebrate. I hadn't developed a backbone, and Charles Darwin's evolutionary bipedal ape-man transitional representational diagram meant nothing to me. And there were days when anxiety prowled like a tigress, immured, awful, frightening, and whole nights where I did nothing except eat oversalted Gone-Soft nuts and listen for a sound that would indicate you had written me. And haven't we all been there, where one person becomes the world and thinks the world of you? Haven't we pined, mist-kissed in our solo showers and leaned over to look out of the cloistered windows and let down our hair for you, thief? This is a poem that's a center that is made up of lines from other poems. It's called What Birds Plunge Through Is Not the Intimate Space. She can't believe this jag-winged majesty really wants a piece of her. Creature stealing up, rising like a black and leafy ledge into the honey-bearing chaos of high summer. Everyone's voice was suddenly lifted. Oh, but everyone was a bird. But it isn't a bird. It's a man in a bird suit, a song inside him, blue, shoulders instead of feathers. There is a sky teeming with winged things, birds with fiery plumage winging wildly across the white orchards and dark green fields on and out of sight. A stand of white pines, individual flames against the masonry of black smoke. The day-blind stars waiting with their light. Stillness falls like a cloud. Suddenly, she puts out her wing, the whole, full, flirtatious span of it. Blackbird, my lord, as nothing will hurt you, I'll sing as I love. This poem is called Fugue for Young and Fugitive. You know you have made me a fool for your attention. You, my masterpiece of work of art. Even when I am out with friends, sky firing into fuchsia, unspeakable purple, barely bearable, beautiful, stamping, horseshoe-heeled boots in the cold and wind singing in our mouths, buskers stealing away looks, fishing for smiles, winking syllables from our throats, brittle whiplash of long hair voices, loud with laughter. Until I start to tear, that's when I realize it's you I cry for, and how much I miss you tonight, or bits, pieces, death, or distant stars, but you know how you had me made, how you turned me into a craven begging merely a mouth, peace for your disaffection. On the run, cut loose, your name tattooed, a summons as a spell, mark made manifest, sirens loud, blue, red, blue, howl. The city holds my gaze, and everywhere your eyes arrest. This poem is called Innocent. You said you really needed coffee. So we walked into the first place with display pastries in the window. And while you stood there, indecisive, in front of the chalkboard menu, I looked so carefully at the posters plugging those coconut oil espressos, ran my fingers through the hand-picked, fairly traded, artisan roasted, brown beans sourced direct from the farmer's co-op in Guatemala, even waved my phone over the QR code, which showed a short film of Jose's Highland farm in Huehuetenango, with its gleaming cherry red berries. And all this, simply to avoid meeting the gaze of the dark, flute-boned cashier, with the letters INNOCENT embedded on the gold badge on his chest, a bright star blazoned across his jersey, striped with the colors of Cameroon, who was asking you now what you wanted. But the thing is, it didn't sound like talking. It sounded as if his throat was melting. And so were you. And me. Me too. This poem is called A Myth of Horses, and it draws on different myths concerned with horses from different parts of the world. A myth of horses. Say a horse is a myth, as big a myth as the bigness of a foot, or the tooth of a saber-toothed tiger, like a lion, feliform, social, carnivore, like a lie extending so far as bone from a cornered mouth, long in the fang, even when closed. Say a myth is a horse. Say a myth is a band, is a herd, is a harris of horse. Say we harassed a horse. Say we whipped it, kicked it. Say we broke it. Say we broke a horse. How would we put it together again? Say there were only ever 5 horses, 5 of anything. Say we set them up, let them all loose, thirst tearing through their throats in a tortured desert, gave them leave to find drink, and right when they came in sight of that glitter-dark oasis, pierced a whistle like a falcon bird of prey, hunting them down, calling them forth, commanding their return. Say only 5 of them did, so we call these Al-Khamsa, the birth of all horse on earth. Say a horse did not need water, for it could hit a fisted hoof upon any surface and draw blood like constellations. Say a horse did not need water because it had wings. Say a horse is a mount, is a fount of life. Say horses were born to run, even though they were not. Say they sleep standing up, not lying down. Say they move towards pressure, not spurred on by pain. Say they shy away. Say a queen made love to a dead horse. Say a queen was made to lay down love with a slain stallion, stallion worth 1,000 cows under the sign of Sirius' 4-eyed dog's star. Say this horse flew like a bird over a kingdom fleeing men, survived a whole year before being welcomed, bathed, ritually slayed by the king of men. Say the day that we burned the body of love, the flames wouldn't go out. Love was just a boy with a sugarcane bow and 5 flower arrows. So we put him in the mouth of a weary white mare and drowned her there, beneath the waves, where she still waits with a doomsday womb, breathing bloody fire. Say a horse is not a horse, but a giant trap. Wooden war toy besieging the beach, soldiers armed to the teeth in the belly of the beast whose spies sewn shut in its lips. Say a horse is a gift, don't look it in the mouth. Say a horse is the rift between us. Say we flung a spear, sprung a leak in its side, yet it did not bleed. Say that's why the bat-blind soothsayer died for saying, Ecco ne credite, do not trust the horse. Say riding a horse for the horse is like feeling the jaws of pride of lion close around the flared boat of your throat, the lecherous grasp of a human predator grappling with your jugular. Imagine the horror as horse. And what if this lion could speak? Say we would not understand him. This poem is called Loss. When I was still little, I had a teacher, a monk. Sometimes I'd really want something, somebody to stay. I'd shy up to him, ask what to do with this desire. He would take my hands in his, cup them as a single heart, say, what are you trying to hold on to? Loosen your grip. See the whole sky resting in your palms. Now, sometimes still, I walk outside, palms spread, eagle to sky and watch, and everything that I have loved falls through my fingers like silt. I'm just going to finish by reading you a little section from the middle of the long poem that makes up the second half of the collection. It's called A's for Arabs. Listen, you are already starting to forget how to look at the world in a way that makes it stay. Waves lapping the shore, foamy lines leaving glossy lips as whips of lapis lazuli blue. Like how this unearthly light moves across the water, how your eyes fill with it without warning. You look down at the children's book lying in your lap, the one you have been reading to Maha each night, the one where the little rabbit learns that it is love that finally makes you real. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. Thank you.
That was mesmeric. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And I think in such a perfect location as well. Thank you so much, Nidhi. Next reader is Seán Hewitt, and his debut collection, Tongues of Fire, was published by Jonathan Cape in 2020, just before the pandemic. And this is Seán's first in-person reading. So we're absolutely honoured that is the case. Seán is a book critic for the Irish Times and teaches modern British and Irish literature at Trinity College Dublin. He won a Northern Writers Award in 2016, the Resurgence Prize in 2017, and an Eric Gregory Award in 2019. In 2020, he was one of the Sunday Times 30 under 30 artists in Ireland, and Tongues of Fire has been shortlisted for the Sunday Times Young Writer of the Year Award, the John Pollard Foundational International Poetry Prize, and a Dalkey Literature Award. His book on J.M. Singh is published with Oxford University Press, and his memoir, with the best title, All Down Darkness Wide, is forthcoming from Cape in 2022, and Penguin, I think, in the US? Yeah, in 2022 as well. He is currently the first poet in residence at the Irish Queer Archive in the National Library of Ireland in Dublin, and it is my great pleasure to introduce him now to read from his beautiful book. Thank you so much, Seán.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's my first in-person reading, and also weirdly my first time meeting Victoria, despite the fact that we spent half of last year on Zoom together. So it's a lot of firsts. And of course, I've been looking forward to Nidhi's book for so long, and I urge you all to go and buy it because it's just incredible and elegant and measured and careful and yet, well, you heard. I'll start rabbiting. Can everyone hear me? Is this okay? My book is split into 4 parts, and if you see me edging towards the end, it's getting sadder and sadder. So I'll try and pull some from the start and some from closer towards the end. I like to begin though recently with this poem called Vestige, which quotes a line from the journals of Gerald Manley Hopkins, who's one of my favorite poets. So it kind of feels like inviting a guardian angel into the room. So this is Vestige. A sash window blooming with frost, December morning, and ferns of it unfurling upwards, white feathers of ice, the ghost of a wing on the glass. From the bed, under heavy linen, we watched how slowly the structures of water unend themselves. Now, across the field, I see you crouching in rapture by the slate urinals, frosted in graceful sprays. Night, it seems, has fingered each effusion into a tree of white crystal. I hear your cry leap, then echo. Inside me, the water branches. The world rings like a glass, and my body rings in the world like a glass. When I originally sent this poem out, it was anonymous, as in my name wasn't attached to it. And when the judges saw me arrive as the author of this poem, they were surprised that I wasn't a woman, which I understand now. But so this poem comes with a little note to say that it's after the birth of my nephew. I'm not able to breastfeed. This poem is called Ilex, which is just the Latinate name for the holly tree family. Distracting myself, waiting for news. I walked until I saw this white cluster of holly growing at the base of a tree. The stems yellowed, the angled clutch of leaves like a bleached coral, a pale antler, almost medieval, like a relic unearthing in the gloom of the wood. Later, still the baby would not latch, and I came back to this holly, unhardened by the sun, unable to turn the light into strength. May it keep its whiteness. May it never learn the use of spikes. Or, in time, when a crown is made of it, may the people approach one by one to witness how a fragile thing is raised. The final part of Tongues of Fire is a set of almost elegies or poems that kind of approach elegy. So I'll read you a couple of those, and and maybe the title poem as well. This poem is called In the Boder Museum. It's about a stone portrait of a cardinal that's in the Boder Museum in Berlin, and it was damaged by fire, so half of the face has kind of fallen off. In the Boder Museum. On a narrow plinth in the corner of the gallery, a stone portrait. A man, his mouth unlipped by fire, marble of the face peeled off in the blaze. But the clothes were spared somehow, as though above the neck he was hung on a noose of flame. And still one unburnt eye, looking up over the broken shoulder to where his sculptor stood. But hush, no one is coming. We are handed our lives by a fierce work. Onto which blank space will I lock my gaze when my father is gone? How am I to wear his love's burning mantle? In Cambodia, in the Angkor complex, there's a temple called Ta Prohm, which you may see have recognized if you Google it. It has trees growing through all of the walls, and the trees are kind of holding it up now. I think if the trees died, the walls would fall over. Those trees are called silk, cotton, and strangler fig, so they appear in this poem, which is called Ta Prohm. A stifling heat, the air heavy, and all around the loud, wet forest knotting the gaps in its own sound. A peace long earned, then broken, and you far off in the hospice bed. Silk cotton, strangler fig, fastened here on the temple as though it grew down from heaven, was sent to hold in place all this human work. And later, through the house of fire, the fallen galleries, I climbed in blue smoke to where the god sat, ringed with incense. And yes, I knelt to her. And yes, I prayed through unbelief. Perhaps now, Father, only something old and impossible can save us. I think I'm not going to read the title poem. One, because it's quite long. And two, because I don't want to be too relentless. So I'm going to dip back and read some poems from the second section of the book, which is a translation of Bwile Shivna, the Middle Irish tale. Most of you will probably be familiar with it through Heaney's translation, Sweeney Astray. Sivna, I don't translate his name, was cursed after running naked at a cleric who was trying to establish a church, and he took the cleric's psalter and threw it into a lake. And he was naked by this point because his wife had tried to stop him and pulled all his clothes off. So he was cursed to always be naked, to live outside, to wander, to be away from people. and to finally be pierced in the side with a spear, and that is how he would die. So rather than doing a full translation, I've just translated some moments from the poem, and even the word translation really is a sham, because I translated lines from all across the poem and pulled them together into my own poems, and then made stuff up along the way. And the reason I'm unclear is because I actually never kept track of what I was doing. So I don't know what is me and what is not me in this poem anymore, but I quite like it like that. I'll just read you a couple. There's a poem when Sivna goes over to Scotland, and he meets another madman in the woods. Sivna goes over the sea to Britain and meets Fair Calla. I think it's interesting. Fair Calla means sort of man of the woods, but it also sounds a little bit like the Irish for husband, which I think is nice, especially in the context of this poem. When Sivna left Carrick-Alistair, he went over the open-mouthed, storm-battered sea until he reached the land of the Britons. There he passed by a great wood, and as he passed, he heard a loud lamenting and sighing and wailing, a great weep of sadness and a small moan of sorrow. And he found another madman wandering amongst the trees. He approached slowly, with caution, and asked the man who he was, and they told each other their tales. And the man, happy to have found a friend like himself, sang to Sivna. "O Sivna, let's keep guard over each other, now that we have found ourselves. Whoever hears the heron cry from the crystal lake, or the clear call of the cormorant, or the clap of the woodcock from the branch, or the whoop of a plover woken from its sleep, or the sound of branches snapping. Whoever first feels the cold of a bird's shadow passing overhead, let him tell the other. Let us care for each other. Let us never sleep more than 2 trees apart for the whole length of the year." And they did so and lived happily. And after a year had turned between them, they each told the other how they were to die. And it was time for Fair Calla to meet his end under the weight of a waterfall. And so with mournful tears and sweet tears they parted, and Sivna returned to Ireland. And when Sivna returned, his mind was healed, and he went in search of his kin. Ronan heard about this and prayed to the Lord that there should be no respite for Sivna, and his prayer was answered. And so when Sivna came to Slieve Fuad, he stopped in his tracks, and a strange apparition appeared to him at midnight. 5 red heads without bodies on the edge of the wood, each screaming in agony and shouting the words of his curse at Sivna in deep, unearthly voices, until he cried and wept aloud and flew off from thicket to thicket, hill to hill, rushing and beating his arms until he could no longer hear those voices or see those terrible visions. And after a long time passing from place to place, homeless and beaten down, Sivna went to his friend, a cleric called Molling, where he was destined to end his wandering, and was pierced in the side with a spear. Sivna is wounded and confesses. There was a time when I thought the sound of a dove cooing and flitting over a pond was sweeter than the voices of friends. There was a time when I preferred the blackbird and the boom of a stag belling in a storm. I used to think that the chanting of the mounting grouse at dawn had more music than your voice. But things are different now. Still, it would be hard to say I wouldn't rather live above the bright lake and eat watercress in the wood and be away from sorrow. Thank you very much for listening. I'm just going to read one last poem. It's called Wild Garlic. Out in the copse after rain, too late after dark to be here. Warm soil, woodlice dripping from the underside of leaves. I root down to the tender stalks and twist them free. Soaked petals dip and touch my arm. Kernels of bud, itch of foliage, of wildness on my skin. The plants are carrying the smell, earth-rich, too heavy to lift above head height, and my boots and jeans are bleached with it. I turn home, and all across the floor, the spiked white flowers light the way. The world is dark, but the wood is full of stars. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was beautiful, Seán. And it's so different. As lovely as Zoom is, it's nothing compared to hearing the poems being read in real life and in such a beautiful venue and with such a lovely audience. Just before we ask the audience if they have any questions, I have one that I'm going to ask anyway. When I was reading your books, I was really struck by the very deep spiritual and sacred elements that seem to be so integral to poems that do not deal necessarily with that subject matter, but that just pervade the language and the structure and the way the poems are organized. And I wonder if you might each speak about, maybe, Nidhi, we might start with you, the importance of that element, maybe the importance of the divine in your work, and is that something that's very important to you when you are, is it something you're very conscious of when you're writing?
It's the first time I've ever been asked this question, Victoria, which is very surprising to me. But thank you for it. And I think every poem I write is a love poem. And for me, love is it's a sense of intimacy with another being. So what I try to do with the poems is to take away for the moment that separation that exists between you and me, between reader and writer, the person who speaks and the person who listens. And in thinking about it myself, I found that what draws me is a sense of devotion, is a sense of adoration of something larger than ourselves. And I think that nearness to whatever we call God or the divine or something sacred is symbolic of that in a way. It's reaching for something that is inside you, but is so close that you can't actually reach it in this very strange, paradoxical way. But it is, I think it's the reason that I write. It's trying to come up as close as possible to that, and failing each time, and so having to write another poem again to reach there. But yeah,
that's so interesting. That sense of awe that's in your work, and even in the most minute descriptions of something small to something more vast, there is that sense of striving to connect with something, as you say, bigger than ourselves, which I think we all need now, not only in poetry but maybe in the wider sense. And what about you, Seán?
Yeah, I think that really resonates with me, that I did. Was that me? Did I just make a noise? No. I just heard like another voice, but I think it was my own
Someone
voice
bigger than
coming back
yourself.
through. But that idea of kind of, you never know where you're going with a poem, but you always have kind of a pre-verbal sense, or I do, of kind of where I hope I might arrive to. And it's kind of like, you have Wallace and Gromit in Ireland, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And like Gromit kind of has a stack of train tracks, and he's on the train and he has to put them down in front of him. It's kind of like that with a poem, like you're kind of making a new stepping, so every word gets you a little bit closer, you hope, to the place that you want to go, but it's always into an emptiness that you don't know where you're going, and each time maybe you get a little bit closer, or you hope you might get a little bit closer to the mystery at the heart of the thing that you're doing, or what you seem to be building a scaffold over. And yeah, you may not get there, but it seems to be integral to the pursuit, We're all kind of sat at home writing things for ourselves most of the time, so it's I think it has to kind of be a spiritual pursuit in that way, and that it's only because you believe in the idea of maybe getting an answer, or maybe even the process being worth it. And there's not many places in our lives often where you get the chance to do that. So yeah, I think I kind of see the writing process, like Nidhi said, as akin to those things. Yeah.
I think mystery is a really interesting word, and I think that's what you were, exploring too. And there is that sense of mystery and trying to acknowledge it and appreciate it, and as you say, like build something over it or around it in acknowledgement of its potent presence all the time, which I think what makes these books so special, and in conversation with each other in ways, I think, reading them, yours for the first time, Nidhi, and yours again together, was such a really interesting experience, and I recommend that you buy them both and do that in the Bantry Bookshop. They're both available there if you haven't already done so. I'm just going to ask maybe 2 short questions, and then I'm going to ask if there's any questions from our lovely audience just before Nidhi and Seán read from each other's poems. Nidhi, you are a poet, obviously, and a very talented, brilliant one, but you have another kind of element to that as part of, I think, what it means to be a poet for you. That's very much what it seems. And you're founder of the Play It Forward Fellowships. And I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the Play It Forward Fellowships, and I suppose how it attempts to help bring to the surface and bring to an audience writers and voices that previously might have been sidelined.
So Play It Forward it's a professional development program for writers who have been underrepresented traditionally in Irish literature and publishing. So it looks across different barriers that writers might face, coming from different sort of racial or ethnic or gender or class backgrounds. And I think with my own experience in being a poet and a writer and an editor, it's been interesting to see how we tend to privilege the individual voice and sort of this very individual lens in terms of creating culture. And I found growing up in cultures which actually didn't do that. They sort of had this polyphony, there were multiple gods and there were multiple characters, and there wasn't just a single dominant voice. I really wanted to see that. I think I really wanted to hear the stories that I wouldn't have come across otherwise. And I think when I think back to what I loved reading when I was a child, it wasn't really stories that reflected my experience. It was stories that were so out there that you wouldn't have ever imagined that in your own, like it wasn't in your capacity, and that was what always drew me, I think, to those things. So I really wanted to try and bring some of that here, because I think there's such a richness, there's just there's so many different stories and experiences, and we're somehow not able to tap into that very well. And I felt like that there was a gap there that probably needed to be looked at. So yeah, it's really important to, I think, build that community in, within literature here. So it isn't this canonical, traditional, very hierarchical thing that is usually presented, and packaged and presented as this is Irish literature. And it's very interesting because it's like, yeah, this is one aspect of it, but then what about all the others? And it's been really, I think, for me at least, really brilliant to see the showcasing of women's literature recently and women's poetry, and this contemporary move towards bringing that into the spotlight, and then also what Seán is doing with the queer writing archive. And so there's a lot of movement in this direction, and I'm really glad to see it. And it is changing, even though it's really nascent. I think it is, like, you're already seeing a lot of different voices. And so, yeah, I'm very thrilled for it. I'm quite excited that I get to do it as well.
It's wonderful. And I think, with the publication of the Cambridge history of Irish women's poetry and these amazing initiatives that, change the focus, as you say, from usually dead, as wonderful as they all were, they're not with us anymore, that are, packaged as being, as you say, representative of Irish writing. And it's, as you say, so diverse. So I think it's a wonderful and brilliant idea, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops very much. And Seán, Nidhi mentioned your residency in the Queer Archive in the National Library of Ireland, which is open now, is it? I think. Can you actually go in? You've been in?
Oh, I've been in. Yeah.
So
I don't know if everyone.
Yeah.
I think
just the poets and residents
I think
can go in.
you can book in if
Okay.
anyone wants to go. I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that and what your kind of hopes for it are.
Yeah. So it's a very daunting task to be the first person to go into the archive as a poet. So basically there's a massive archive of queer stuff, everything. Like there's photos, there's badges, stickers, there's whole runs of magazines and newspapers, official letters for government, or the telephone services, HIV services, everything. And there are boxes and boxes of it, and thanks to Sacha de Boyle at Cork and the Arts Council and the NLI, I am in residence there to write poems based on the things that I find in the archive. So over this summer, that is what I'm doing. But it's quite a humbling thing to do, because the more that you read into it, the more you realize how much work goes into things you take for granted, which sounds stupid, but even having a community, an LGBT community center, it's like a 5 or 6 year project of everyone's tireless work, and it's all in the background. Everyone, someone's got to sort this, someone's got to find money for this, there's some problem with the fire regulations, or so, everything, and no one's being paid for it. And so it really makes you appreciate how much work goes into keeping things afloat. And also, depressingly, the process of erasure that happen constantly as you read through the archive. Magazines are closed. People are not allowed to say that anymore. Advertising is pulled all the time. So I think it teaches me that you have to keep on the pressure as well. Like it's never one thing that is ever achieved. Because the second you can see it there on paper, the second you stop, it unravels very quickly in a couple of years. So yeah, it's a real privilege, but also incredibly daunting to have to I have it in my head that I have to encapsulate 100 years of national history into 10 poems.
No pressure.
A great way to start.
And will that be coming out in a pamphlet form, or will it be?
So it'll be a performance at Cork next year in Galway, and hopefully, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the thing I was just about to say. So yes, That's all.
Exclusive.
No, there may be some like a film of a performance.
That sounds wonderful. And like very exciting, as you say, both so exciting and also so daunting, and also such a movement forward in terms of, bringing to the surface, as we said, all of the brilliant polyphonic voices that are part of Irish literature. So I just think, as well as being such gifted poets, I really admire the fact that you're, bringing along your contemporaries and also the people coming up behind you and making space for them and shouting for them, and it's just really gratifying to see. It really is. Does anyone have anything to add or any questions that they would like to ask these beautiful people? Or will we go on to our readings of each other's poems? If anyone, nobody, they're just stunned by your brilliance. You see. So Nidhi, do you want to read one of Seán's when you're ready?
I would love to. So Seán's book has been, it lives in my head for the last year. I've spent so much time with these poems that some of the lines are now, I'm actually worried. I'm like, maybe they'll show up in one of my poems and I'll be like, totally plagiarized Seán without knowing. But this poem in particular, because I think probably for everyone, our relationship with time has changed so much over the last year and has become so distorted in so many ways, And I've always struggled with this, and I keep coming back to this poem because it's like a companion for me when I think about time. So I'm going to read this poem called Clock, and please forgive me, Seán, for the way that I'm about to read it. Clock. A close, warm evening opened by rain, and me caught out, leaning on a cedar. A heron walks its white zed along the bank and out into the water. And just here, a small beetle, sheen of coal black, pulls itself into the pink bed of the rhododendron flower. Then, once, and once more, a fox barks. And though I love you, and I know there is no such thing as held time, this tree seems suddenly like a stillness, a circle of quiet air, a place to stand now that I have had to leave and cannot think where I might go next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I said, I was looking forward to this book for so long. I think I heard Nidhi first read in 20, I don't know when the years are anymore. It was at the ISL 2019, and was blown away. This poem is called Because. And interestingly, I think a couple of weeks ago, wrote the final lines of this poem out as if I had written them. And it was not me that had written them, it was Nidhi that had written them. So I think we're just in the process of merging into a single poet here. Because nothing is like anything else. An approximation will always break down when you need it most. Because nothing is as soft as a horse's muzzle at the curve. above quiet punctuations of hair, thin pointed teeth guarding tenderness. Because I had just been that morning at my college graduation, looking gorgeous in that dress, where the speaker urged, "I hope you will be vulnerable with each other, that you will be open to giving and receiving vulnerability." Because he touched me without asking, saying, "You are like nothing I have ever seen before." Like how I am touching this horse, feeling it's like nothing else before. Us, two silken manes, two hurt mouths. I am so gentle with you between my hands, but tell me, strike my face, pull away. Do you not want me to? Blow into the open black tunnel of flared nostril, wet, dark animal breathing back. That's how they kiss. A passing stable hand spoke in my direction, and I believed him. I believed not because it was true, but because I wanted to.
That was so interesting to hear you. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. And that is a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so much to Nidhi Zak, Aria Eipe, and to Seán Hewitt for reading from their beautiful debut collections. Thank you all for being such a lovely audience. And thank you, the gods, for preventing the rain from falling. And for all of us being here together. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully the sign of future hopeful things to come, and more poetry readings and more exciting gatherings. Thank you so much, and thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, Seán.